We have folks all the way from the West Coast to the very East Coast. So Perugia represents. Welcome, welcome. Oh, fantastic. Kalamazoo, Washington, D.C. Abby Murray Wright, you've just moved across the country yourself. Fantastic. South Shore. DC, also DC. Excellent. Welcome, welcome. All right, well, we're expecting a bunch more folks, so I'm gonna wait to start. We don't want to start too late, but I want to give folks a chance to arrive. Melanie's in Cape Cod. Cindy Veach, I wish I could ask you how to pronounce your new town you just moved to in Washington. Abby Murray, as a former Washingtonian, do you have any sense?
Snoqualmie.
Snoqualmie. Yeah, I got my dog there.
Wow, awesome. What is your dog's name again? Remind me. Is it Bill Murray or is that the cat?
Bill Murray is my cat. Dory is my dog. She is named after the fish for the appropriate reasons.
Awesome. Oh, wow, from Cumbria, UK.
Jennifer Sweeney.
Josephine, so great, welcome. And folks, if you're, one thing we were talking about is when you're putting something in the chat, if you click panelists and attendees, then everyone can see what you've had to say. And I think it just starts out as the default to panelists. So I've been in that situation where I'm writing stuff that I think everyone can see, and it's just going to like the few folks who are presenting. So you can click the little arrow to the right of the word panelists in the chat, and there's a drop-down menu that lets you write to the panelists and the attendees. Actually, it looks like you can write individually to people. Can you here? Let's see. Yes, you can. Oh, but it also goes to everyone. All right, wonderful. All right, more folks are coming in. So if you're just joining us, you're just coming into this amazing webinar celebrating 25 years of Perugia Press. All of the poets are beautifully displayed across the screen. We have founding director Susan Can here. I'm Rebecca Olander, the editor director currently. And folks are just throwing up in the chat what they, where they're coming in from, where they're zooming in from in the country or out of the country. We have Josephine from England, which is very cool. Is that your friend, Lisa?
She's one of my favorite poets, you guys. I'm so excited she's here.
Thank you.
I hope you look up her work after this.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so I'm gonna just wait a few more minutes. We have, oh, Carolyn, welcome. Wonderful, Carolyn's here from the Southern Appalachians. Cheryl from West Virginia, hi. Oh, that's great. What goes around comes around in the beautiful poetry community. That's so lovely, Josephine. Thank you. Syracuse, Philadelphia, Michigan, Cape Cod. Ooh, Tejas, Megan. Explain yourself, Megan. Texas, yes?
Texas, yeah. For now.
Did I say it right with the J?
Yes. Billy.
Kansas City, Catherine. Yes, the missed AWP opportunity. We could have seen you in person. Oh, from Cape Town, South Africa. Amazing, Malika. Welcome.
That's my good pal. She's a wonderful poet.
Oh, this is beautiful. I was sort of focused on how we were going to be from both sides of our country, and it's just wonderful to have folks coming in globally. That's so cool, Janet. Well, if anyone wants to pop off mic and say hi to anyone they see, that's cool. I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes for folks to come into the room, and then we'll get started. Wendy from Buffalo. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Let's see. All right. 29 Palms near Joshua Tree, California. This is, Abby says, this is the most people I've seen outside a grocery store for over a year. Yeah, it's really good to be in community with you all. I know it's bizarre still here on Zoom, but it makes things possible to be together globally. Welcome, welcome. All right, well, what do you think, Susan? Should I get started? Okay. So hi, everyone. I've already welcomed you, but I will just let you know again, in case you're just coming in, I'm Rebecca Olander. I'm the editor and director of Perugia Press, and it's my very great honor and pleasure to welcome you all here this afternoon to celebrate 25 years of Perugia Press making beautiful books by emerging women poets. I'm really proud to work for this nonprofit independent press and to represent the work of all of our amazing poets, the poets in the room today, the poets no longer on the planet, the poets who are not able to be with us today. So this is most of our Perugia sisterhood, but not every single person is here, but you're all here with us in spirit. Our afternoon is going to run as follows. I want to give you a sense of what you're in for. We're going to hear from 19 of our poets with little micro readings of 1 to 2 poems each. The poets are going to read in the order of publication, beginning with Gail Thomas, the first poet we published, and closing with Rebecca Pelkey, author of the 2021 Perugia Press Prize winning book. Instead of individual introductions for poets between readings, each poet will briefly introduce herself and her book. After the first 10 poets, founding director Susan Can will share a few words as an intermission, just to kind of shake things up and say hello to you as well. And then the remaining poets will read. With the time we have left in our 2-hour event time after the readings, the poets and Susan and myself will converse about poetry and Perugia Press. And there may be a time for questions, so we might be using the chat for that function as well. If you do have a question that you think of as the event is going on, please feel free to put that in the chat while you're thinking of it, and we'll try to get to that. So please feel free also to share where you're zooming in from. If you're just joining us, a bunch of folks have done that. The poets, I have not done it myself. I'll try to get to that, but the poets have been doing that, and our audience members have as well. And any words for the poets or the press that you want to say as we're going through the event. We can't see you as our audience. We're doing this webinar function. We're already filling the screen with just poets, but we feel you with us here today. And in all the ways that you continue to support and engage in our work, we feel you with us. So thanks so much for joining us to mark this important milestone in the life of our press. And we will now begin the readings with Gail Thomas. And what will happen is each person will, again, mute themselves on the mic, which I'm about to do, and then the reader will come on and read to you. So enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you, Becky. Hello, everyone. I'm Gail Thomas. I guess I would say I'm the matriarch of Perugia Press. My book, Finding the Bear, was the very first title in 1997. And I want to just thank Susan Can for believing in my work and for bringing the voices of 25 amazing women to the world. I'll start with reading one poem from Finding the Bear. It's called Creation, and it begins with a quote by Audre Lorde. And there is for me no difference between writing a good poem and moving into sunlight against the body of a woman I love. Sun floods the bed, your skin absorbs heat, the curve of belly a warm dune that fits my hand. It begins behind the eyes or in the gut, a hum that may become a name or memory of light slanting through white birches, a room, fingers around a cracked cup. Words sprawl, move into lines that break and break again, along the surface of paper, of air, or flesh, smooth over the tongue, wanting connection, a shape to move against. And I'll read one poem, a very new poem. It's entitled Pulse of My Heart, which is the translation from Gaelic of the word for beloved. Akusla mukre is the Gaelic word, which means pulse of my heart. Because at 2 a.m., my heart rattles its cage, the chills begin and I pile on blankets. I am breathing in, I am breathing out, the way I was taught. Because I remember my father's first heart attack, my mother withdrawing afterwards like a dog that's been kicked, waiting for the next siren to pierce the night, wondering if the warm man snoring beside her would still be breathing at dawn. And it did happen again, like some stories of stopped hearts. The hummingbird's heart beats 10 times a second, and once an iridescent darter perched so long at the feeder, chest heaving, I knew it was dying. Because when my mother was pregnant with me, she found her father dead of a heart attack in the kitchen. Every day, a neighbor gave me bottles, bathed and rocked me. Because I must have absorbed her grief, imprinted by the absence of her smell and touch. In early photos, I am rarely smiling. Because I carry my own twisted grief, the deaths of 3 lovers, the youngest outrun at 30 by seizures, surgery, and cancer's return. She asked me to take her deep in the woods and leave her like an animal, like an elder laid out on an ice floe. The octopus has 3 hearts, one which stops beating when she swims, so she crawls to stay strong. After she lays and tends her eggs, death comes slowly. Because the jaws of dementia swallowed my mother, I scour the house for my grocery list. Later find it in a drawer I never use. We laugh, my beloved and I. Still a chill signals blankets and blood pressure check. Because later in bed, I reach for my Akusla mukre until the pulse of my heart settles its weary beat. The blue whale's heart, the size of a small car, beats once every 10 seconds. After death, it takes decades to decompose, sustaining millions of creatures. This is my body. Take of it and eat. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Perugia. It's great to be here with you all. My name is Janet Alfs, and I'm zooming in from Northampton, Massachusetts. This is my Perugia book, and the artwork is by Kennewack Ashabak, and the book is from 1999. Bleeding the Radiators. Every autumn, I try again to open the valve in one radiator that refuses to be bled. So be it. Let the air bubbles rain in that region and the rattling at night in my head. Let secrets hiss through my veins. Okay, I'm still alive, poisoned by desire. Enough to fuel this house and all the houses from here to outer space. If I were a plumber, I'd have the proper tools and a logical description of the mysteries of a system hidden somewhere in these walls. But I've come to accept the work of one who must time after time return to the jammed bolt without a clue, and to the savor of common grit, and to aspirations of belief in a hidden current, joint I'll unlock someday into the next blazing form. And then I have a poem from 2020 that begins with a quote from Claudia Rankine. This other world, that world, would presumably be one where Black living matters. But we can't get there without fully recognizing what is here. And the poem is called Traversing Chasms. Like a bird who sings above graves of stolen bones and arrowheads, then lays her eggs where silent steps still echo through her feathers. I cannot say whose music I've become traversing chasms. Nothing can repeat this endless swirl of dust-filled shadows. Following, I cannot know whose dancing moves me now. My tongue has tasted how a word can spin its own return to spell heart, the same as earth, from spiraled roots to stems unfurled, dark to light, in language meant to split us, we refuse. Humanity distorted, fear white virus drives the news, wanting us to squeeze so tight, we'd never dream this chorus. But we've been given open hands, separate from her wings, to hold grief's echoes, sharing ground we can't imagine yet. Enjoy, it lives. Thank you.
Janet, that's so wonderful, so beautiful to hear your work. I'm Katherine Anderson. It was great to hear Gail too, and I'm so excited to be here and hear everybody else's writing. I have to thank Susan Can for coming up with a great idea of Perugia. Wonderful, and to Rebecca for pulling us together. I'll read one poem from my book, The Work of Hands, which came out 21 years ago. The poem at the very end kind of reflects back on my book title. And the poem is called The Rooms Above. From my place on the train platform, I watch people leave through the electronic doors of a city hospital nearby. They button their coats against the wind, pull their collars tight. Sometimes I see them pause and look up at the huge medical complex, only a lattice of brick and beams and not miraculous. How much they want, every crossbeam, every plate of glass, all the wide angles of architecture to hover by the person they love and cure him. Such violent belief when the body becomes an inhuman thing, a wild machine of hope. Once we carried my little brother through the emergency entrance, his muscles rigid in seizure, his eyes the open, stopped eyes of a doll. When a nurse gently pulled off his pajama top and let his arms fall, I could imagine how the dead are wrapped, how they are lightly washed first, hands crossed to the chest, feet tied together with cloth rope, plastic unraveled over legs and torso and shoulders. Then someone fitted an oxygen mask over my brother's face. He heaved one long scream to the corridor and he lived. Yes, he did. I would say to those lonely people below me. I'd walk down the steel stairs, past traffic lights, over broken glass to say, even if he hadn't, someone would have touched my brother tenderly, someone high above us in a square white room, someone whose whole life has been the work of her hands. She would have moved to wash my brother's skin, hold his arms at his chest. Those hands would have touched my shoulders too, as I turned away. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Braverman. I am the author of this book, Red, which was at one time completely red. 2000, and there it is, 2002. This is a poem that is the second to the last poem in this book. It's called Fall. We were talking about the various indignities of my job, Molly and me naked in bed, Michael on the love seat facing the water with his cup when the phone rang. And it was James saying, "Have you heard? My God, have you heard?" And Michael and Molly and me running to turn the television on and seeing the buildings on fire, the day here pristine and clear, and not believing what we were seeing. James and Dustin arriving on their bikes, and for some reason, James had a plum tart on the back of his bike, and Kenny's voice on the phone in shock, "My God." And then the buildings coming down in some perfect vertical cloud, and Kenny screaming, watching it happen from his dining room table because he had gone back to New York. And just that morning, I'd been missing him, wishing he were here with us having coffee while I complained about my job before getting dressed and going to it, how he'd become part of my normal day. The news now coming fast from the well-heeled anchorman, not believing the words coming out of his mouth. A plane in Pennsylvania's gone down and the Pentagon's been hit. And Lynn came over crying and sat down and watched. And Maggie, whom we hardly know, over for a meeting with Michael, sat down too. And then an hour had passed and James took down the plates and sliced the tart. And there was this amazing tart and this gorgeous day and 2 televisions and 5 telephones. And Molly washing every article of clothing she could find, and Michael pacing like a lion with the phones, and Dustin eating, and James serving and cleaning, and me going from the bed to the sofa with the TV clicker back and forth like a domestic cat who feels the remnants of life outdoors in its body, but it's come to this, scanning the wild world from a state of repose while James sat near my feet, now on the green hassock weeping, and how we couldn't stop touching each other all day. None of us could. Michael retrieving a call from his father sometime early on in all of this, saying his mother's cancer had spread and this might be it. The time to end treatment may have come at last. And Michael's face saying, "My life is ending now," that all our lives were ending and a new uncertain one was taking its place. We could feel it happening immediately, the way the next day the sky here changed from one season to the next, just like that. No matter how much we may have wanted it not to be so, so it was. Fall now. The bellies of the gulls as they flew overhead at sunset turned to orange in the shifting light. How impossible this beauty can feel even on a day when the world hasn't ended. Wretched, scavenging birds like winged goddesses in the air. I was counting the heads of the people I love, the way a new mother counts fingers and toes, as if the people I love were one child. I felt tender toward us all like that, and protective and fierce and helpless for the moment, except to count and then to tend, drawing in the missing ones over the next few days. So we were all assembled, all of us, sitting down to enormous meals together, our other James pulling his boat up to our launch at high tide. His boat, which is named for our dead friend Susie Laws, only he'd spelled her name wrong on the boat. I noticed he'd spelled it S-U-Z-I-E, but I couldn't tell him that now. Why should I? It was too late. Him throwing fish over the side of the Susie Laws that would be our dinners, bluefish one night, bass the next, leaving the carcasses on the beach for the gulls to argue over and devour, keeping Molly and James up all night with their argument, which was like a century and which I slept through, dreaming of those shrouded women on the other side of the world who have been suffering the living death of invisibility only to stand poised on the brink of the next one, and of the heaven the Muslims believe to exist, which is a fruit-laden garden full of unveiled women, abundant and available as the fruit. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Becky and Susan and all of you lovely women. This is the last poem I've written recently. It's called Yom Kippur. I was going to write a poem about the 40-foot pitch pine that recently fell on my house. I was going to make the tree a metaphor for the family in which I grew up, that the tree's falling was inevitable because it was rotten inside the way the system that made my family is rotten. But I lost interest in that poem. Instead, I let myself be distracted by our one moon whose light is falling on the water, spent hours cooking for people I love and hours after that with them eating. It is a dark time in the world. When I fasted in atonement for my past year's failings, the worst among them was allowing everything to lead me only toward that, toward grief. Thanks, everyone. Lovely to see you.
Thanks, Melanie. So powerful. What a beautiful reading. And I'm Linda Pinissi. My book is Seamless. And I also want to thank Susan Can for her vision and for helping me design the cover, which was a wonderful experience in itself. I'm going to read a poem called Reddening the Moon. On the balcony with the moon stuck to her shoulder. No, on the balcony with the moon blooming from her mouth. And her red shoes doing what? Dancing? And her red shoes reddening the moon's blueness, like her red shawl whitens her breasts as they gleam there in Chicago, October, early 70s. And almost 30 years later, when asked, what does the moon remind you of? My friend remembers this. Her friend's flesh, the photographer's flash, and the moon low and sultry, rounding its way to a glossy page in Spain, the shoes high-heeled and highlighted, a body, her friend's body, a river shimmering from shoes to moon, moon to shoes, the dark that night vivid and lipstick lush. And though tonight, as we walk this wide circle atop this wide hill, the moon so full we feel it pulls us to the world's rim. We know the dark may never be that lush again, but our faces glow a little and our pace slows as if our feet have stepped into the color most worth remembering. And a recent poem that will appear in an upcoming book, a sheet music of candles and coins. Notice the field in its yellowing, not trying in autumn to be green. Lay out your own season like that. Become the large, unstoppable change taking place that always takes place. The sun imperceptibly shifting while the moon continues its comings and goings, and the whole forest plays a sheet music of candles and coins. Haven't you offered enough resistance and premature grief? Seat yourself in the blue chair at the field center. Name the constellation you are becoming part of, still life with woman, or woman with still life, or still woman with life. One morning, it will be snowing. What currency will you carry through thatch and bare branches? What prints will you follow into hickory and ash? Thank you.
Hello to everyone and love to everyone. I'm Diane Gillum. My book is Kettle Bottom. And I'm going to read you one poem from my Perugia book. We are in Mingo County, West Virginia in 1920, around the time of the 1920-21 West Virginia Mine Wars. And the speaker of this poem is Edith May Chapman, and she is 9. Miss Terry is the company teacher. Dear Diary, my teacher, Miss Terry, has given me this little book. For a girl, she says, has got lots of feelings she needs to get out, and maybe she don't want to tell them to the whole world. That is what a diary is for. So I will tell you, dear diary, all my secrets, beginning with Emily Lawson. Every few months, church ladies in Cincinnati sends us at Winco a mission box. Mostly it is a big lot of nothing can't nobody use. But last time the women began to praise Jesus and clap, for it was all coats. They lit into the box and began to parcel them out, holding them up by the shoulder, seeing what fit who. I just sat quiet, but I seen a blue coat in the pile, so pretty, blue and soft looking, with a black velvet collar, jet buttons like little barrels, and shiny black loops. I didn't say nothing, for it is wrong to covet. But Granny Chapman, she seen me looking, and she said to Mama, well, I do believe that little blue coat looks made for Edith May. I knowed Mama might frown, for she don't believe in taking the finest things. The first, she says, shall be last. Granny Chapman looked at her hard, though, till Mama smiled and said, why, yes, Edith May, come on and let us see. All the neighbor women said, ain't she pretty? And look at them blue eyes, till I felt like a queen. When me and Mama went on home and Daddy seen me in my coat, he commenced to stomping around, for he is hateful of them mission boxes. But Mama caught his eye and shook her head no at him. He just said, well, and grunted some and sat back down and looked at me. Edith May, he said finally, you are the apple of my eye. I run over and clumb up on his lap, which I have not for a long time, as I am 9, and hugged his neck and told him, Daddy, you are the huckleberry of my heart. Later, when Mama and Daddy was abed, I will tell you, dear diary, I snuck my coat off of the peg to sleep in. It crackled under my back from a letter I found stuck up under the lining, which says this. Dear mountain girl, my mother has told me how in the coal camps of West Virginia, there are girls who do not have dancing lessons or a new coat every year or the benefit of scripture or even supper every day. Mother says I must remember that the last shall be first. So I have kept last year's coat and send you the new blue coat Grandmother Lawson sent me from Boston. I hope it will keep you warm and make you feel not so poor. Very truly yours, Emily Lawson. I don't aim ever to tell, for it is good when Daddy don't stomp and Mama smiles and says, Edith May, you plenty warm in that pretty coat? And I say, yes, Mama, warm as pie, which is true and not a lie, for it is only my heart that is cold. Thank you.
My name's Carol Edelstein, hailing from Northampton, Massachusetts. And I had so much pleasure in making this book with Perugia, with Susan Can, and all the people that helped put it together. I've been so grateful, and following Diane was a very hard act at the time, and I've just gotten happier and happier to be following her everywhere. I've heard you, Diane, read that poem a number of times, and every time I hear it, I'm like, it's like I'm hearing it for the first time, and I know it. It's just a beauty. Thank you. I'm going to read to you a poem from the Disappearing Letters called How Shall I Travel? How shall I travel? Why did you travel? I had heard of forests. I wanted a new place to cry. I was tired. I don't know. I was wearing sailcloth trousers, which caught the wind. What were you wearing? For ballast, my grandmother's necklace. Nothing. Under all my clothes, I was wearing nothing. What did you trade? I traded the blue childhood for a yellow one. For 2 slices of cinnamon toast, I pledged my allegiance. I tried to trade my hands for a good night's sleep, but no one would take them. No one would take them? No one would take them. May I have your hands? What will you give me? A good night's sleep. I know of a forest. I know of a lake. How shall I travel? Give me your hands. Happy to introduce Lynn Thompson.
Thank you, Carol. I will be eternally grateful, as long as I draw breath, that this beautiful book was published by Perugia, and even more grateful to be part of this amazing sisterhood that just grows in wonderfulness every year. I'm going to read a poem that honors my ancestors in the Caribbean from Beg No Pardon. I am Grenadine, having been born of elite Black masses. I am a slave washed up on spring. I am Lower Bay and its blackbird. I am the great grandniece of Chatailleur, chipped fretwork on his chattel house. I am sharpening stones from Queensberry, mist sheltering sugar plantations at farm, a dwelling house joined to the cane, to the windmills, to the water wheels, a hodgepodge of Caribbee footnotes in Father Breton's diary. He say, from the very beginning, they were filled with hatred, not just for slavery, but any form of injunction, authority, or submission. This is why I run to the sea. Being well supplied with rivers, I oscillate windward and leeward, dangle a bracelet of fishing keys, tattoo of bordel petroglyphs on each palm. Yambo Pass carving the bones where my elbows curve. In 1780, I was harried by hurricanes, under heavy fire from all enemies. But I stride with considerable numbers, led the insurrection at the Massareca River. Some say I am 1/2 Anglican Church, but I am thorny and cut down. I am never 6 furlongs from Kingstown. There I am after ash of Soufriere 1902, or so my daddy tells. All internal wars, pregnant with destruction, fled in different directions. Today, I am Golden Guava, Young Island, Grenadine, and my name will not be confused or improved. And I'll close with this newer one that was published in Rust and Moth just this summer. Seeking Paradise. Don't tell me how I came to be born by a river. Instead, won't you bring me honeysuckle and applause of Mexican marigolds? Tell me it's true, stardust bequeaths its anthems and won't die, so you can bring me a rebanada de cielo that stopped its weeping. Tell me Sam Cooke had it right singing "A Change is Gonna Come," but do not tell me about a child who crossed the Rio Grande to come here, but has been lost to her mother, doesn't know when she will eat again. Don't you know this girl will withstand, then, without warning, kill you while you sleep between twisted sheets? I wish you would bring us jalapenos baked into sweet cornbread, and with it, some green tomatoes, capers, a subtle casamadero. Won't you bring us memories of a dog, a ball, or all of Saturday to do what children want Saturday to do? Why can't you be kind? Why won't you in paradise us? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Pearson, and thank you all for being here. And thanks to Susan and Becky. This first book, 2 Minutes of Light, changed my life. So I'm forever indebted. I'm going to read a poem. It's the last poem in this book. Sort of recaps the book. Consider the lilies of the field. Years ago, I slept on the sidewalks in the Tenderloin, a summer junkie selling baking soda crack to college boys. Every day the fog cribs in, the blue gum cypress sleep underwater, and I do not feel a drop. I'm 30 now. Still Silva and Reggie use their caked brown fingers all day twisting baggies behind Ms. Brown's feed bag. Silva keeps her teeth in her scarf. I write all day and into the violet night, my heart soaked through. All my life I've been vain in my grief. Meanwhile, the thin-skinned lilies hold more than their weight of water deep in the perpetually shedding forest. They toil not, neither do they spin. And my last poem is a poem that I wrote this summer. It's coming out in 5 points this winter. And sorry, it's a little weird. It's sort of me making a self-care list that those therapists give you, you know, hug yourself, hug the pillow, into something very disturbing, which I'm good at doing, so sorry. And by the way, Lynn, I loved your reading, thank you. Okay, self-care, sorry, it's here. Okay. Self-care bucket list. I tried deep breathing, counting 20 inhalations from the diaphragmatic dome-shaped muscle, and everything cracked inside me. A bird's shell is formed after 19 hours, so I gave up trying. I tried hugging pillows, squeezed the feather pillows so hard, barbs and shafts, ligaments, bones, dimpled skin, even blood sang out to me. At least 6 feet deep is how you have to bury your dead livestock, and at least 100 feet from a stream. So I walked the stream, now fattened with ice lace, holly red, liquor red, soap berries, dots of pure unmixed color, almost like a Syrah, dead at 31. Tried pinching my arm real hard, fuck that, and my skin bud a deep blue phlox, bathed in lavender and rose hips, but a flower serves as symbol for just about anything, so what the fuck benzos. Sang and opened my mouth black and wide for the sky, snowing feathers, shut it tight because cheap gold fillings read my palms a single crease, my head's gone. Imagine vacation, imagine travel, but drove frontage roads, all named frontage road all year long. Found an open field, but its pollen tassels and junctures of sweet corn tillers were carved out. Counted stars on the storm glass, ethanol, camphor, the nitrates forecasting snow tonight. Lit blue yellow glass soaked in propane, hot quartz, metal oxide, dense vapor. Folded myself into a collection of leaves, leaking champagne chlorophyll on a page in my journal. Sleepless, I cast a swallow netting to stop falling. I tried everything to reach me, sent myself emojis, liked myself in the bathroom, a bleeding post-it note stuck to the spit on the mirror. What were the words? Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to Susan and to Becky for creating this incredible community of poets and Perugia poets. What a treat to read with you today and just to listen to the incredible poems. I'm going to read two short pieces from my book, How to Live on Bread and Music. Nocturne. There is a blue city in mind, constructed slant ways along a rippling canal. Clean and unpeopled, but for a musician who plays a harp without strings. The city has one chair where he sits by the broad strokes of water. A lone street lamp tends its blue arc of light. A Persian door, a Zeppelin sky. The world filters through his empty frame as he plucks the air. Maybe you hear a song, or maybe you don't. That is the choice we are always making. In flight. The Himalayan legend says there are beautiful white birds that live completely in flight. They are born in the air, must learn to fly before falling, and die also in their flying. Maybe you have been born into such a life with the bottom dropping out. Maybe gravity is claiming you and you feel ghost scripted. For the one who lives inside the fall, the sky beneath the sky of all.
Wow. I'm getting so nostalgic listening to the poets from our early years. Hi, I'm Susan Can, founding director of the press. Thank you all for being here, my favorite poets and lovely audience. One of the wonderful things about Perugia Press is that we continue to support our poets' books long after publication. And the reason is proven here today. Poetry does not spoil with age. When I started the press in 1997, I had no idea that I would be creating a community, people who like each other, read each other's books, who give public readings together, who find out about subsequent books by helping to screen and judge in our annual contest, which, by the way, is open to submissions right now. If you want a chance at becoming part of what we are doing here, send us your manuscript. I want to take a minute to thank the poets who took a risk on Perugia Press before we had a national reputation and a competitive contest. I'm grateful to Gail Thomas and Janet Alfs and Kathy Anderson and Melanie Braverman and also to Almitra David and Faye George, who have since died, but were part of the initial group of poets who gave us their strong manuscripts, all of which created the foundation and ballast to build a sturdy, strong enterprise of today's Perugia Press. I also want to jump forward to acknowledge the amazing leadership of Rebecca Olander, who took over as director 5 years ago with power, grace, thoughtfulness, creativity, and bravery. She is responsible for, among many things, our new, beautiful, easy website, and for leading us in taking important strides toward becoming a more equitable and diverse organization. And since I was promoted from director to president, I'm president of the board now, I have to do board member duties. On behalf of the whole terrific board, I'd like to thank our donors, and I'd like to encourage you to support our good work by making a donation to help bring more women poets into print. $25, $2,500, any amount makes a difference. In these difficult times, we need poets as our witnesses. Plus a reminder to use the special anniversary coupon code 25 Perugia for a whopping 25% off books in our online bookshop through the end of September. Now let's get back to the poetry. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Susan. I think that's me. I want to thank Susan. Thanks, Becky. This is my book, Gloss. And I think this is 10 years of Gloss now, which is really astonishing. And I want to reiterate what Susan said about the community. It's really remarkable, I think, and unique experience for a press not to just publish one book year after year, but also to create this group, this sisterhood that we can come back to. And that we read for the contest, and we come together every once in a while, and it's just really special, and special to be here even online. I'll read a couple poems from Gloss. The first poem I'll read is Soil, and it's my own autumnal poem to add to all the other beautiful autumnal poems read today. Soil. Soil in your mouth sounds like soul, like the word's been oiled, all the old, consolidated, uprooted from this spit of overtold land. I hear you grazing in the understory, your mouth full of maple keys, black walnut husks, cold autumn dirt and rock, bark, lichen, and broken breaking green, sour mash. Your mouth's a stolen cave-in, which to fold the world. And I'll also read this poem, Casserole, which is sort of imagined from a site of a coal mining disaster in West Virginia. But I guess it speaks to any time, any other disaster, and also sort of the experience of sort of waiting for news while you are the news. Casserole. We are always welcoming you from our porches, where we are always waiting, always eating pasta we bring to ourselves in Pyrex. We are always widening our smiles, our arms to embrace you too, always our hips turning to the side to sneak by you, honey, to the kitchen where we'll fix you a plate and a tall cold glass. Oh yes, the porch is mighty fine, and the stars so bright, and the night sky we're always likening to fabric, a blanket up to our chins, putting all this to bed. Heft of night, I wrote just moments ago, made the stars into push pins, countable, as we are always to let you in, always in our time of need. Yes, the night's a blanket, and the night's a pulling weight. We'll stay up till we can't see straight. Is that newsprint or soot on those boys or men's faces? You'll attribute our you'll attribute our skipping record of likenesses and kindnesses to the state we're in, that you find yourself in, always and suddenly, this bad shape like Naomi's body, suddenly getting the news her brain has had for days, crumpled to the floorboards as the ground is falling, always down and down, beneath us deep as a downed draught of air or beer or life. We're good with soot, so we'll always take the ink off your hands, as if it were your coat, to shelter our paper white bodies that always remain always most true to you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So wonderful to see all of your faces today. I'm going to read a poem from my Perugia book, Begin Empty-Handed. The Heart in the Car Wash. When I found it, I couldn't tell if it was animal or human, shining there in the cold corner on the wet floor, not pulsing, not steaming, no electrical charge, larger than 2 fists, a wet mop head, a ham, not an overweight plum or bunch of grapes left too long, halo of fruit flies hovering. I'm telling you what it looked like, what it made me think. Cows, bovine, a bull's spleen, a bullfrog crouching, that kind of weight. Or a kind of bomb, the way childbirth is a bomb, the purple wetness, why you'd never wear your own nightgown, why you'd rip a nightgown off. It looked like Jesus's heart, purpled and taxed. I can see it stuck on top of my Christmas tree. I can see it as a pair of wet socks, swollen and bald. Last winter, I couldn't touch my car without throwing off sparks. I grew afraid to reach for the door handle, to adjust my mirror. I wore rubber boots and gloves, tried to be sure I was grounded. The day I found the heart, I met a man who told me he'd experienced the same thing. He felt the same fear, the same shame. I was the first one he told. And a poem for these liminal times that we're in from my new collection, which is out this year from Two Sylvia's Press, Disappearing Queen. The poem is How One Thing Becomes Another. Dear husband, this is the time of crickets, chronic racket proclaiming change. An end time, which includes regrets if you're paying attention, which so often you are not. Dear husband, it is either the time of crickets or katydids. When I listen on YouTube, each convinces me the way I'm persuaded in argument by whoever speaks last. Unless the argument is ours. Last night I said, I want to stop fighting, and you held me loosely as if there were a way to touch me that didn't involve touching. The truth for me was closer to the children's note I found. I'm sorry if you are. Dear husband, it may be the time of cicada wasps, how they insert their poison, drag their victims underground. I hear you ravaging that bag of chips from 2 rooms away, but anger is a secondary emotion. What advice do you have on surviving long marriage, on surviving a fall from 10,000 feet? I will listen while you explain and explain. First, be small, like a cricket. Small falls slower. Dear husband, In June, mice built nests in your engine. I was glad it was your car, not mine, but afraid they might migrate. Summer kept lying to us, throwing rain like cold coins. I had given up on the sun the way I'd given up on other things. Now, in this time of overrunning and chirping, I visit the mad gardener next door. She tells me she's afraid of her brother-in-law because he kind of looks like Satan. I don't say, so does your husband now that you mention it, clipping his toenails on the front porch, eyes red with exertion. How one thing can become another. Nesting mice begin to seem harmless, like children, familiar and basic as spark plugs, as crickets. Thank you.
Gail, that was so fabulous. I'm really happy to follow that. I'm Corey Williamson, and I'm calling in today from Montana. And I was a little late this afternoon because I was out hiking in the Judith Mountains and got lost. So I'll have to go back and listen to the first 3 readers. But I guess, what is fall for? And I'm really, really happy to be here now. So I am the author of Sweet Husk, which came out in 2014. And like Nancy said, this book with Perugia changed my life. And being part of the Perugia community continues to change my life. So I'm really happy to be here with you all and reading with you all today. And when this book came out and I was doing a lot of reading and running around and trying to get it out there, there was a poem that I would always read to kind of kick things off because it's a long single sentence and it just got a lot of history for me. And I felt like if I could get through this poem, I could get through anything. So for old time's sake, I'm going to read that poem now. Where the sentence ends, the sentiment burgeons. Years since the old woman's grandson turned early to ash, and years since she's seen the young woman who was his lover, but seeing her now extends her arms, crying, "You look just the same as that first day coming up the driveway. I saw you forking hay from a feed trough as the chaff drifted in the sun and in the long, wild loops of your hair, waving and laughing as if I knew you already, and him leaning on the pitchfork and smiling, the black seed of his dying already planted between his hips, brittle and black as a walnut, smiling as if he'd live forever, or perhaps as if he knew. But it was all right, because that night he would lie by the young woman below the grandparents' bedroom with the windows wide and know the yard gonged with the deep blue temple bells of hyacinth, that the cows sucked moisture from the dark and the owl in the barn laid her eggs slowly through the night's course, so that the hatchlings would wake and feed on one another. And the girl's hair was a great mystery flowing over him to mix with his young man's beard, red as falu paint on a Swedish cottage, or red as the tongue of the bowsprit his brother will invoke not long from now, wishing to launch the body out to sea, burning, and red as the ruff of twin foxes who bark and snarl, chasing each other through alfalfa rows until they both roll, showing the golden scythe of their bellies to the moon, and she shows them hers. And I'm going to read a short new poem that's a very fall poem. And this came out in the spring issue of Ecotone, which feels like a minute ago. And this is from my current manuscript in progress, what I hope will be my third book, and it's called Your Mother's Bear Gun. And this poem is One moment it is summer. One moment it is summer, glasses of white wine in our hands as we hover around Beverly's evening primrose bush, awaiting the promised 9:10 p.m. show. Soon enough, I'll be barefoot in the cold grass, picking apples and listening for elk hollering like ghosts in their fierce and protective courting. The season a lightless tunnel, the path in darkness. But at this moment, there they are, petals shivering loose from furled cones, flitting out their buttery wings into fragrant four-fingered palms. Oh, I think, as we all say, oh, oh, there it is, the way to flare from shelter, willing burst and die. We stand quiet now as the Sphinx moths arrive. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thanks, Corey, and thanks, Perugia, and happy birthday, happy 25th birthday. I love everyone on this call. I'm Lisa Allen Ortiz. This Guide to the Exhibit was the 20th book, and I always get to follow Corey. I like that we have people we follow, and she's always going exciting places and seeing elk and stuff, so she's fun to follow. A Guide to the Exhibit is mostly based on exhibits at a Natural History Museum, and I'm going to read the last poem in here, which is called Microfossil Exhibit. What's the difference between this stuff and sand? Here, the collector said, and handed the curator a battered box of slides, the infra-kingdom Rosaria, the kingdom Protozoa. An exhibit of orbs and puffs, half moons, gritty lines, squinty burrs in constellations. I also shed foolishness, ghost prints in caves, drafted letters, margins, pinched and crumpled bits, a universe made of marks, and in the still museum, such small wanting, to be handled, seen, and noted, frozen luster, what's left of cells. And I'm going to read a recent poem that's an ekphrastic poem. So I went from doing a project of looking at natural history exhibits to looking at paintings online, and I'm going to try to multitask. And everyone knows this poem, this painting, I think, Judith beheading Holofernes, but that's what this poem's about. Judith beheading Holofernes. What gore comes up when I type it in? I spread Judith wide between my thumb and finger. I'm reflected in screen, afloat over scene, and Caravaggio painted this twice because we all like a story that ends with some man's hair in the hand of a girl, his lolling, half-open eye. We like her unsullied shirt. We admire the placidity of her dutiful face. I learned from my surgeries that the body is nothing but a gurry of sin, electrified tendons that tug at the pouch of the heart. What did you do? The healer asked while I sat bandaged up on the bed. What did you do to cause your cells to explode? What are you holding that you need to let go? I couldn't explain. My body was some kind of a lot sold as a block. My head was a knot nest tossed in the grass. My head kept dripping blood from its neck. A man called me by name. A man said, wait here. A man said, stay still. How much can one body take? I said, get your hand off my neck. I said, you cut me off in the middle of something I was trying to say. I said, this inhale is heavy like tar on the street. I said, that fury outside is something I birthed. I was not acquiescent, but still I radiated, I burned. I resisted the takeover of body by body by body. I seduced the cells of myself. I saved the village of myself from the invading horde of myself. I became the glass I saw myself in. I'm my own head hanging in the gloved fist of my hand. I have a sword in my skirt. I wait outside my own tent and caress what remains of my throat. Thanks, Perugia.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be part of this reading. I'm so happy to be a Perugia author. I don't know. I could go on and on. I wish that every poet could experience at one point in their life what it's like to be so supported by a press, because it's few and far between. So I'm really lucky. Okay, I was inspired. I was going to read a different poem, but then I was inspired by Diane to read a persona poem. So, oh, and here's my book. I don't know how to make it not backwards. So there it is. I don't know. And there's the back. Yay. And the artwork is from a local author, and local is Joshua Tree, my hometown. So, Dog and His Man. And this is in the voice of a dog. I find him, or he finds me, in a box of dogs. We cry cold. We live in his shirt. 2 jackets. He cries for someone not dead. His wife. He says her name, but I forget. You too big. You too old cry like that. He says, sit, and I don't. I say sit, and he don't. My man, he has no people. He hugs the ground. He shakes the hands of pear-colored leaves. I lead him. I lead him. Together we are a mirror. He looks more and more like me. What is a bad life? What is a good one? My master, my man, he keeps us in shade. His hands grow thick as a tub for me to drink from. Some people never see the winter sky, he says. And it's true. We can't come in. We can't get free of night, but we are never starless. Times we swim in the summer, we jump a locked gate. He lifts me, he shakes, you too big. In the pool, he speaks of tuna fish, tuna the size of my leg, size of you. He splashes my face. Salamander grow a new skin every 3 days. He's happy in the pool, in summer, in the pool, sinks to the bottom, a lifetime, then pops up again, electric blue. You would eat me for my salt, he say. You would eat me for my salt, I say. The man is old. He shivers. He dies slow. Times we walk in snow. He shivers. He dies slow. Somewhere up above it, just off the ground, he say. He chatters. He cries. He dies slow. I pull out my bones and make a bed frame. I pull out my muscles and make cushions. I lie on top of him as a blanket. Thank you.
Wow, that was great. I'm Megan, and I'm reading from Girl Jump. And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Rebecca and Susan and all of my Perugia sisters. So I'm going to read a poem called I Felt the World Cracking. There's a tenderness to grief, is what I keep reminding myself, listening to sizable hail pelt the windows of our small and cluttered apartment while trying to prepare my Midwestern spouse for the routine violence of a Texan spring. The next morning, the air like a string of bloated pearls, the wife gone before I rise, the bed another tomb I must pitch myself from. My body's so incapable today, like it was yesterday, as I drove to grab mediocre coffee instead of making my own. Incapable as I saw something wrong in the road, the way it piled up in one spot, how my throat caught on all that yellow. The oh, oh, oh of my mouth. Even then, I felt the world cracking. Even then, I knew as I pulled over and picked up their bodies, some still flitting, yawping, some so obviously gone, how little I could do for their cracked beaks and flattened wings, how little my mother could do for me as I called her sobbing from the car and she said, slow down, I don't understand. My father too, as I explained the lemon yellow and silver, the bright red secrets on each wingtip. Oh, a cedar waxwing. I say it in my head, cedar waxwing, cedar waxwing. I want to know what about this world is tender, but I am still in bed, now feeling the skin on my head, picking at it until it bleeds. The brightness on my fingertips, the comfort in digging away and away. All I can think about are the birds and how I should clean these new wounds, how I must care for all the little deaths in me. And then I'm going to read a newer poem. It's forthcoming from Diode, and hopefully it will be in another book someday. It is called I Can't Mend the World Without My Sadness. Rabbits frenzy amid the strawberries, scatter their wild griefs. There above the clover, moths quiver in velvet capes. My children stare out the window, watch the god of lightning shatter the day's good work, the mighty anthill, the bird nest town atop the trees, chorus of four-nerved daisies in the weeds. I understand the world's need to rear and wreck, its loop of bounty and ruin. I have loads of yarn, at least 3 good glue guns, and enough tape to rearrange the stars so they spell mercy. I have my sadness and I have my children. What more can I promise them? The leaves, the rain-heavy ant, every godforsaken rock. What more except that I'll walk through the rubble afterward with needle and thread and stitch up the tender rabbit, the mangled worm, that I'll try my best to glue together each nest strewn from the storm. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, Lisa, you're saying you love to go after Corey, and I was like, oh, that's so nice. I hate going after Megan. Like, that's so fun. That's so sweet. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Becky. I'm really glad to be here too. And, you know, I echo everyone in saying this, and I knew from the first time that I met face-to-face a large portion of this community, I was like, I'm never going to experience anything like this in my life again as a writer. So if you're thinking about submitting a manuscript, but you're hesitant about it or something, like, call me. I'll give you my number. My name is Abby, and this is my book, Hail and Farewell, and it came out in 2019. And I'm going to read the poem, Thank You for Your Service. A lot of these poems have to do with my husband's deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and the impact of the war on me, who was not even there. So the you in this poem is my husband. Thank you for your service. You try a new response each time, and none of them work. They strangle you like a belt, right there at the grocery store in front of the potato crate. They choke you at the DMV, smother you on the bike trail. Today, when the veterinarian shook your hand and wouldn't let go, you called it a living. And she said, it's so much more than that. Clapping her left hand over your knuckles, the dog whined, smelling biscuits. At home, we eat dinner on the porch steps, plates on our knees and iced tea glowing at our ankles like lanterns. You tell me about Haditha Dam, 2 boys from 82nd Airborne dragged from their truck and cut to pieces like goats by the road. You shrug, say they'd fallen asleep, headphones snug in their ears. This is why music isn't allowed, why forgetting where you are is lethal. The pear tree in our yard, the one that was here before us and flowers with the stench of death each spring, shakes itself out over the lumpy grass. We let the dog roll in its rancid petals, complain instead about the mosquitoes. how they grow bigger every year. And I'm going to read a newer poem. I write a poem and an essay every week. I give myself a Friday deadline and I send it to a group of friends who won't tell me how shitty it is, or if they do, they're at least entertaining when they do it. So this is from a couple of weeks ago. This is written in response to the growing trend for Americans to say the war in Afghanistan was our fault, you know, the mea culpa that doesn't actually do anything. So I'm yelling at myself in this, and I'm yelling at lots of people. I find myself yelling a lot now. This is how to recover from the war that was your fault. Practice saying, I owe you a country, then build one, a country, using your own land for materials if you must, but the country you build must not be for you, and it must become the country you broke, repaired. Make enough homes for all the living and the dead too, and don't forget the gardens. For every fruit tree bulldozed, plant 2 in its place. Go back in time to the first newspaper you chose not to read and read it, then go to work and wail in your cubicle. When Melissa asks if you are okay, cut your hair off. Get fired, find a job, repeat. Eventually, all the Melissas will have told their girlfriends and mothers and significant others about their day, and several of them will begin to suspect that a single explosion in a market in a country that is not their own is enough to reasonably lose their shit over. And eventually, we will all be out of work and policy will shift to accommodate despair and disavowing war. Think of protests outside the Capitol as holiday dinners if you must. You may not want to go, but you show up because you know how your family gets. Get mad. Anger in the past is preferable, but if all you have is the present, start here. Throw shoes and pens at the TV, swear oaths, end friendships. When someone calls a suicide bomber or an airstrike a tragedy, like it's some soft, simpering moan in the ballad of history, go shove them by the shoulders. The more furious you get, the more energy you will have to build a country, the one you owe all the living and the dead. And don't forget the gardens. Make sure there are flowers good for nothing but perfume and sprawling. Don't just plant corn. Tell your children about your grief the same way you taught them to tie their shoes, slowly, many times, with conviction and demonstrations. If Melissa invites you to a party, you have not recovered from the war that was your fault. Tell them you would rather tear your clothes, then go tear your clothes. Every time you feel tempted to say the war was your fault without proving it immediately by building a country, go find 10 things you can use to build a country. Stones, wire, air, windows, paper, schools, stairs, blankets, bread, and don't forget the gardens with good dirt and water. And you will need to make sure the sun shines in the country you owe to the living and the dead. And you will need to deliver all your promises in complete silence. And when someone asks you how you helped to end the war that was your fault, go dig a well, go beg for money, go practice remembering all the ways you started it. Thanks, everybody. I'm not mad at you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Valderrama. This has been such a treat, and it's so powerful and wonderful to hear all of your words and to be celebrating Perugia today. I'm tuning in today from Tempe, Arizona, and I'm the author of Now in Color, which was published in 2020. And I'll read 2 poems from this book. The first of which is a Spanish word poem. Relato. Relato. Noun, feminine. Fragments underwater and distant gleam like starfish, sure to dry into brittle, pale selves. I've learned to collect what's scattered, learned to set them here on the chance odd ends whisper. And the second poem is a sister poem. I grew up, I have 3 sisters, and my older sister would tell these sort of stories that you just felt sucked into. And she was one of the reasons I think I pursued writing later on in my life. So this one's called You and I Saw Animals. 1. Lion summertime swallowed us up year after year. We sisters picked neighbors' apricots, peaches, nectarines. We swung our legs, acrobats on ponies, from pedals to handlebars. We puffed air into the nylon of our swimsuits to make breasts like mermaids, the water holding them up. That was when we started wearing swimsuits. We were wetting our hair in front of our faces, then rolling the damp sheets of it back to look like George Washington's. The hose twirling in the pool until the last warm day had already passed, the water too cold to venture in. 2. We listened to longer books on our parents' bed, illustrated Greek mythology. How silly all those gods and grown-ups, chasing the sun, opening boxes, looking back. Odysseus had built that olive tree bed, each bedpost a growing tree trunk. But Penelope was alone, sleeping on the left or right side, then spread out in the middle. Each night, it was as if we could undo our own weaving. We could start the next day as the last, living it over, perfecting it. It was as easy as unlacing our fingers from one another. While Odysseus was off on one of those promises, we were sure the bed had grown, lifted off the roof. Inside became outside. Animals wandered closer, following light. 3. We thought of lion summertime, speckled deer, antsy rabbits, baboons, green parrots, and crows sidestepping her bed's branches, invisible to the suitors who, to their credit, only saw Penelope. But the crows weren't there for love, just olives, which they took in the mornings, as they did on our street, when the fruit fell purple and fat. Stepping on split olives, on bed covers, they made crow's feet all over. This was the story you told me in the attic of our garage. I could feel the spotted fur of the leopard, the feathered necks of flamingos. We were all those animals at once, until you were bored waiting for love. You flew down the attic's drop ladder, leaving me in the rafters. You began to sing. I will forever be grateful to Perugia Press for publishing this, and I will turn it over to our newest member, Rebecca Pelkey.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you so much, everyone else, for your beautiful, beautiful words. I'm so thrilled to be joining this community as its newest member. And as Jacqueline said, my name is Rebecca Pelkey, and I'm going to be reading from my hot off the presses book, Through a Red Place, that just came out. I'm going to read 2 poems. The second one, very short. The first one is called Acnestus 1, and Acnestus is a anatomical term for the place on your back that you can't reach. So these Acnestus poems are about things that I was trying really hard to get to or find and having trouble getting there. Acnestus 1. My mother and I walk back and forth down crooked lines of intermittent headstones, some so covered by grass that they can't be read. It's sad, we say to each other, that no one comes. No one kicks back the clippings or tears away what's overgrown. It's hot for June in northern Wisconsin, and moving keeps the mosquitoes at bay when the breeze dies. We're in a place once called Potter's Field for those too poor to pay for burial or who have no one to take care of them in death. The woman in the office, who I go to when our search is fruitless, tells me in a hush that they don't call it that anymore. She says some 60% of the graves are unmarked, that all the space I walked on like lawn was gridded full. She has a map, dug up from a back room, rolled into a tube and flaking like dead skin. The transparent paper displays a crowded quilt of names. There was an outbreak, she says, lots of people at the same time. When I ask if they'd ever digitize the map, she brushes this off with a why bother shrug. Nobody much comes looking. I click pictures on my phone nonetheless. Back in section T, I know where I'm going. I know from the faded script on the map, from the names on the headstones next to them, the one's kitty corner. I judge the length of lawn between bodies with my own. They're here, I tell my mother, unmarked. She doesn't understand, but it's important that I stand on the exact spot, as if I have to align myself just right, as if I'm waiting for family to puzzle into place, a cat's cradle of stretched string that will snap itself to a grid, the perfect tension telling me that this is finally where I fit. And then the second poem is my contribution to the autumnal poems that people have been reading. It's written in one of my ancestral languages, which is Mohegan. And so I'm going to read the Mohegan version first, and then I'll read the English translation of it. It's very short, it's only 5 lines. But I'm better at writing in Mohegan than speaking, so do pardon me if I stumble a few times. I haven't quite gotten it down yet. It's called Panibagat. Kahongak Pionk Son, see already. Kahongak Pionk Sonwanayu, Askat Putagonik, Ahutani Shun Imakak, Pukat Wichi Wutquanch, Napa Kaha Kwashuk, Nakwashap Kwasquachat, Panibakat Wiyun Pionmush. Falling leaves. The geese go south, pumpkin bread in the oven, wood smoke in my hair. I am ready to be cold. Falling leaves moon comes. Thank you.
It's me again, but I'm overcome. So I'm just going to invite everyone to change your view. If you had it on speaker view, you can put it onto gallery view and see all of these amazing poets at once. That was beautiful. We should, I don't know, I was saying this before everyone came on, we should do this more often. It's impossible with life, but this is just a beautiful, beautiful afternoon. So thank you to each of you. Gorgeous work from over the years from so many of our poets. Thank you, Susan, for those lovely words about me and trying to take over the press as best I could from the beautiful ship that you built. So that takes bravery to begin an endeavor, and it takes all of you to keep making it go forward. And I'm really honored and proud to be part of that. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who's here listening in. I'm sure you feel overwhelmed as I do. And I was thinking, oh, we could go on and on, but it's really nice that we have a little bit of time to talk to each other at the end of the day as well. So our plan was to, if you came in partway, or just to remind you, our plan was to ask a couple of questions for the poets, to have them talk to each other and share some thoughts about Perugia, but also poetry. And you're welcome to put a question into the chat if you have one. I see that one person has a hand up. Anna Marie, I see your hand up. I'm going to lower it because I can't bring you on to the screen. But if you have a question, please let us know in the chat what that is. And so my question to start us off, and many of you actually touched on this so beautifully, just naturally. I was wondering, thinking about celebrating Perugia Press, which we're doing this year, if the poets could talk about something special associated with your book, something that was maybe made possible by its publications. This could be something that it helped you with personally or introduced you to, something it brought into your life, someone it brought into your life, or an opportunity, a new creative outlet, maybe a place that it led you afterward, like you needed to do this book to go somewhere else. So you can take that in any way you like. And I just want to thank, so many of you spoke to the way that Perugia Press supported and celebrated your work. And I just appreciate that so much. So anyway, take it away if you're, I'm just going on, so I'm going to stop talking and mute myself, and you can just feel free to jump in.
I'll jump in, never having been one to be shy. I think for me, and so many of the poets that I see on the screen, and I know we don't have all of our sisters with us, but the fact that the press has not only supported the book in and of itself, but has really worked hard to put the book out into the world. And so many of them have won recognition in other contests and other contexts. In my case, for beg no pardon, it was the Great Lakes College's New Writers Award, which afforded me the opportunity to read across several colleges in the Midwest. And there's no way that that would have happened. I didn't know any of those folks. There would have been no reason in particular for them to find me. So I think what Perugia does so well, and so many of my fellow poets in Los Angeles are green with envy about, is the not only the continuing support of the work, just the book itself, but looking for ways for us to get the work out into the world. So that's just one more reason for me to be so grateful to all of you and for all that you do.
Yeah, well, my book came out in 2016. I don't know if you guys remember, it was a bad year for women otherwise, but it was very amazing to meet everyone. We got to, in those days, meet in person, and we had a 20th party, and meeting all of you and meeting Lynn Thompson and Corey, and has just been fantastic. Just knowing you're out there and reading your work. And then another thing I love about this press is you get to be involved, to be a screener and a reader after you have a book. And that is, it's amazing to watch the baby sisters who come along, to see your manuscripts and to watch them become books is so fun. It's like reliving the joy all over again. And that is something I love about Perugia.
That's so funny, Lisa. Just so you know, when I first met Lisa, because it was 2016 and the 20th anniversary event was a couple of days after the election. And so we were all kind of reeling. And the first time I saw Lisa, poor woman, she was sobbing in her car over the state of the country, and how we were going to go forward. And we're still wondering that. But here we are all together, and that feels good.
I remember that year was the year I took over the press, and every single submission that came in felt like a bomb on the situation. It was like gifts of women's words, just like, this is what we need, this is what we need, this is what we need. And it was really a gift to me to be able to get involved in an even deeper way, because I already was for many years as a volunteer myself, but just to be able to throw myself into something that felt so meaningful and important and about women. So yeah, that was quite a moment. And to have that celebration right that week was also a bomb and a balm.
I just want to say that getting to go to Massachusetts and meet Becky was like one of the best things to come out of having my book picked up by Perugia. And also, like, I'm from the desert. I've lived most of my life in the desert. I've never left the West Coast. And so for me to get to travel to Massachusetts and just fall in love with that area and get to spend time with Becky, who took just such great care of us and of my husband and I, and became such a good friend along the way, is like one of the best things to come from this opportunity. Yeah.
So one of the reasons that this question interested me is that a while back, I was talking to the board when I was still the director, and one of the previous board members, Allegra Mira, who some of you probably know and remember, we were talking about like, what is the point of publishing these books, and why doesn't anybody buy poetry books, which you can do, by the way, 25% off today till the end of the month on all these books. But she just said, maybe that's not the point. And it just kind of made me think about things a little bit differently. So I'm curious if people have stories about how the book has helped them just by having the book, whether it gets out into the world or not, but like, did it help you get a job? Did it help you in your next creative project? Just curious, to help people who are wondering out there, why should I bother publishing a book of poetry?
I'd say this is not about my book, but about Diane's book. My book would not exist if I hadn't found Diane Gilliam's book and read it and taught it and felt it deep in my bones, and then had the word Perugia in my head. And then when I saw the call for submissions, said, well, of course I'm going to send my book there. You know, it would be amazing to be published with the press that published Diane Gilliam's book. So I think in so many ways we make way for each other in ways that you can't even realize, you know, that not only what the book leads to for you, but also what other people's work leads you to. So thanks for making a space that creates more work that way.
I would say too that this book, oh, sorry, Rebecca, are you gonna talk? I think we started talking.
Go ahead.
No, Diane, you should piggyback on Ida, what she just said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ida. And you know, when I was sending that book out, I did not know what could happen with it, because I could not get those poems into magazines. And so when I went to send the book out, I thought, I'll just send it everywhere, you know, but I didn't know who would have it. And I wouldn't have thought Northampton would be the place that would pick up my girls in that book. And I remember one of the really happy things that happened for Susan and me in the beginning was my beloved teacher, Eleanor Wilner, was in residence at Smith, and they asked her, was there anybody she wanted to have come read with her? And she had me come read with her. And then Susan decided there was no reason why Kettlebottom shouldn't be the common reader for the next incoming class at Smith. And she worked it, and it worked. And that led to me being asked kind of all around that area. And everywhere I went, the people, our people were received, you know. So I think, to me, that's part of the biggest blessing of the good things that happened to Kettlebottom, was that all of those people in my book went with me everywhere that I got to go. Pearlie went to Smith, is what we said.
Love that. Who someone else was going to speak? I think Abby, maybe.
I was just going to say that my book was kind of like one of the first steps in helping me leave academia, and that has been really healthy for me. Even though it's been a hard couple of years, it's I think it was like the door. This book was like the door that opened that said that I I already was a writer, whether or not I wanted to choose that. So that was incredibly important. And like I've been able to do more of what I want to do in terms of just being a writer, instead of, spending so much time and effort on the politics of academia. And like, I've been to West Point a couple of times since the book came out and taught poetry workshops to cadets. And like, you had told me 10 years ago, like, you're going to be teaching at West Point, like my mom damn near died. So it's like the fact that I'm able to do those things is really, it's very renewing for me. So that was all I was going to say.
Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to say something really basic. And thanks to Susan, I felt incredibly encouraged just to, so personally encouraged, but then to have this, this ongoing collective encouragement. I really don't take it for granted. And so I was saying this also to Becky, and both Susan and Becky, and then many others of you, I have been at any number of events with to celebrate this, that, and the other thing, including Perugia Press, but what the importance of poetry in the world. So what Perugia is doing such an amazing job of is celebrating collective encouragement, because so many times voices get isolated, and there's a book and it's kind of by itself. But what's happening right here, and what I continue to seek in the world and continue to feel encouraged by, is the possibility for collective voices, and how this weaving happens here on the screen, in person, wherever it's happening. That to me is the core of what Perugia brings to the world. And it's very powerful, no matter how many or few voices there are to celebrate the individual as part of a group, as part of a chorus of voices that are all encouraging each other. That's really something to celebrate. So thank you, everybody, for the encouragement, the deep encouragement of today and of the ongoing journey.
Beautiful. That was not basic. That was beautiful. Jennifer, go ahead.
Sorry, I have to unmute. These are all beautiful answers. I guess I'll just share that in like a writing life, there are a couple of like really big yeses if you're lucky, but I think the yes from Perugia is like the biggest yes for me, because it came at a time in my life when so many other aspects of my life were saying no. Just things were not going well at the time that my Perugia Press book got accepted. And that yes was like, that really kept me going. And so I think of things that happened before the Perugia yes, and it was this sort of and yet like access that kind of wheeled the whole thing in a different direction. And then the yes from the James Laughlin Award for that book was a total surprise and shock. And I got so many letters about that book, and those were all little yeses. I mean, it was just this, I still get little notes about how to live on bread and music, and more so than for any other thing that I've written. And so it just gave off sparks that I feel like will like stay with me for the rest of my life, and really did recast my life in this much more like optimistic direction. And that was incredibly like helpful as a writer, but just like as a human being on the path, because I needed that book at exactly the time that you all received it. So I can't begin to sort of express the and yet quality that it kind of offered everything.
These are such beautiful answers. Thank you. And I feel like all of everything you're saying is like little sparks for me, because it's hard work running a little press and doing it alongside teaching. And it's just so sustaining to be together with you all. And I don't have to remind myself why we do this, because you're right there all the time, and the press is all the time. But this is just really lovely to hear. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to go, and we can also move on to another question. We have 8 minutes left, and I would love to hear your voices up until the very last moment. Yeah, Jackie.
I'll just really quickly say, I mean, my book has been out for a little over a year, and just the care that Perugia dedicated to this, or Perugia Press dedicated to this coming out, was really special, and feeling valued as a writer. And then also transitioning between, the student role, I was doing my PhD in Utah, into a teaching role and continuing to apply for jobs and sort of find my way in the world. This has certainly been a gift to have, and moving forward, I know will be sort of the baseline of my literary career. So I'm so grateful that it's with Perugia. And we're kind of entering November, which is a year from when my launch was happening last year. And though it was online, it was, I think, especially inclusive because it was that way. All my friends and colleagues and family could come, many of which who would not have been able to travel otherwise. So yeah, every time I think of Perugia, or now in color, it's like a big old smile.
I still remember your family who set up like a screen in the yard, and they all gathered together to have a party. And
my same sister that I just sort of read the poem about.
Really cool. Yeah, totally, Emma. I'm just going to check the chat and see if there were any questions or anything. Emma was weighing in with, the basic statement from Janet was more like elemental, fundamental at the core of what's important. Yeah, thank you so much to your chat will be saved, and I'm having a hard, I'm usually really active on the chat, but I can't really, write back to it, but I'm seeing lovely things. And I know all of the poets will love to look through later at all of those sparks you're throwing off in the chat as well. Is there anyone else who would like to talk about anything other than like the poetry book, or our second question was about, so I'll just throw this out here to close. I wanted to close our celebration with hope. I'm not sure we needed to come back around to that. I am already feeling that, but I wondered if folks wanted to share what's sustaining you and poetry, and your poetry these days, your reading, your writing practice, your poetry communities. I guess this is one obvious, evident answer right here that we're all experiencing in this moment. But anything that anyone wanted to share, because it's nice to share that with listeners as well. What is getting you through these challenging times and feeding your poetry? Diane, go ahead, and then.
Yeah.
And Nancy.
I feel like in many ways, I don't know, I think in my case, it's a coincidence of entering a new time of life together with the new, our new sense of being in the world. But I feel very much like a student all over again. That I'm looking for some new kind of language to say these other things that that all that we've gone through in recent years have brought us to not understand yet, but to sort of like begin to identify. And so I'm studying, not exactly in the way I did when I was beginning, but I'm reading. I've got a new practice of copying, you know, the lines that you underline as you read, copying those out and then writing prompts from those lines, and as many as I can, one book at a time. Takes me about a week for a book, and it feels like a new way in. Everything, I would just say that's what's getting me through, is the way everything right now feels new again and sort of undecided and possible. That's all I know so far, but that feels like a lot.
Beautiful, thank you. And Nancy, you had something, I think, to say.
Yeah, what Diane said was beautiful. No, I think, you know, all the terribleness in the last couple of years, there's one thing that has sustained me is these online readings, remote readings rather. I have been to so many more readings in the last couple of years, and hearing people read has been a lifeline. So thanks. Yeah.
Linda, go ahead.
For me, I think it's been teaching, connecting with students who are more vulnerable now and more needy, and serving as a bridge to their creativity, I think has been very nourishing for me. And not only in terms of teaching them, but certainly in terms of my own work, it has fed me.
Lots of nodding around the Zoom room here. Lots of teachers here, and I feel like we would feel that as parents too. And anyone about to say something, you could have the last word. No pressure. I do want to say, as you're just thinking, if you have one last thing to say, that there are some amazing things being shared in the chat. Abby and Lauren talking about things that have been sustaining them. And I agree, collaboration and yeah, reading, exercise, little kids, cicadas, oh my gosh. Abby gave us a whole list. And Lauren, it's just beautiful to see your background and the other creative work you're doing, following that online. Please check out Lauren's work. She's got these dolls and collages and erasures and all sorts of really cool things that are going out into the world.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, very, very cool. And I'm gonna put up into the, so true to my word, was there anyone who was about to say one last thing? All right, women are amazing. So I am just throwing up there in the chat, and so is Susan probably. I decided to put it in there too because I had my finger was ready. Reminding you about our coupon code all the way through the end of September, 25% off your entire Perugia Press cart at our bookshop online. Encouraging you to maybe thinking about making a donation as we move into our next decade of any size, but we just thought 25 might be a cool thing to celebrate our 25th anniversary. And really just the final thing I wanted to say was thank you for attending and being part of the Perugia Press community, because everyone who is here listening is part of this work that we're doing. We couldn't do it without you supporting and reading and volunteering and buying the books and listening in, being our audience. So, so much love and thanks. Poets, stick around if you want to talk a little bit more, just even for a few to each other. We're gonna hang out in this space. Attendees, thank you for attending. And yeah, happy anniversary, Perugia Press.